Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to another special edition of Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. This is the review of the new Chris Pine fantasy action comedy film, Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves. Oh, man. Uh, this is a. I don't know. How should I start this review off? This is something kind of unprecedented to me. I'm not, well, first off, I'm not a Dungeons and Dragon guy. I've never played Dungeons and Dragon. I don't know anybody who has played Dungeons and Dragons. No, I tell a lie. I do know somebody. I had a friend back in high school who played it, and he told me about it once, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And that was the end of it because it looked too complicated for me. It's a tabletop game. It's not a video game or even a board game, so to speak. It's a role player game. And I never got into those type of games. It looks interesting. It just never piqued my interest to the point where I wanted to play it. And then back in the year 2000, there was a movie adaptation of this. Dungeons and Dragons, and it had Jeremy Irons, Marlon Wayans, and some other people. I don't know. I got halfway through that movie, and I and I clicked it. I couldn't watch it. It was horrible. It was just a horrible movie, and I never went back to watch it because universally people panned the movie. It was a horrible movie. It bombed at the box office and so on and so forth. And so we fast forward to now, the year 2023, and they taking another stab at it. Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves. And I went into this skeptical. I went into this, like I said, not knowing much about the game. I knew the Cliff Notes version, but not enough to say like, okay, I know this character, I know this how they do it, whatever. My God, I have never been so surprised and excited for a film like this. This is an awesome film. This was a real good time in the theater. This is truly a theatrical experience. Uh, the best way to watch it. You need to go to the theaters to watch this film. What a good time. Very funny. Didn't expect to laugh. It's been a while since I can honestly say I sat in the theater and laughed out loud. I laughed out loud in this movie, and it was meant to be. I've laughed out loud in movies that weren't meant to be funny. But this was actually trying to make me laugh, and it did. Um, the film is directed by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly. Those two gentlemen are amazing. They did an amazing job here, but they also directed Game Night, which is one of my favorite movies of the past, at least favorite comedies of the past, what, 5, 6 years, whenever that movie came out. And they did what was that other film? I don't know why it's escaping my mind. But anyways, at one point, they were tapped to direct The Flash. And creative differences between them and Ezra Miller and whatnot, they left the project. I watched this movie knowing that going into this, and after I left the theater, I was like, my God, they dropped the ball. Those guys would have did an awesome job with the Flash. Not to say that the Flash doesn't look good. The movie looks excellent. That's going to come out in June, but I would have loved to have seen their version of the Flash. There's a scene in this film where there's a one take kind of a action chase scene through a castle that I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is really really good, well choreographed, well executed, and well acted. The film stars Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Renee Jean Page, Justin Smith, Sophie Lillis, and Hugh Grant, all of which did an awesome job. There's no big stars here, and I think that's what's going to ultimately kind of hurt it at the box office. But all these actors and actresses did an outstanding job in their roles. Chris Pine is his normal Chris Pine charming self, you know. It and he was surprisingly super funny. Even though I know he is funny, he is a funny guy. He was in Horrible Bosses 2, and he had a funny role in there, and in other films. He is very funny, but here I really loved his take on his character. He never took himself seriously, yet you know he was smarter than what you thought he was. Michelle Rodriguez did a great job with what she was given. Her role is kind of difficult because she doesn't have a lot of dialogue, which some people may think that's a good thing for Michelle Rodriguez. But Michelle Rodriguez is an awesome actress. If you've seen all of her work, she is really good. And she had to kind of be the brawn of this little group here, this motley crew of thieves, if you will. Um, and she held it down. You know, she was funny in some of the dialogue that she was given. Justice Smith, you probably recognize him from his role in Jurassic World, one of the Jurassic World films. Um, it's pretty much the same character, but is a lot more weight to this character. He has a lot that he's dealing with as a little sorcerer, and I think he did great. Sophie Lillis, who was the young girl from It, she was great. Loved her character. And Hugh Grant is Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant is the dude is just he's Hugh Grant. That's all I can say. This is a non-spoiler, by the way. I'm not spoiling anything in case you was wondering. Not gonna spoil because there is some real nice twist in here. Real got a couple of cameos that didn't expect. Glad to see it wasn't spoiled in trailers. Uh and the action. Let's jump into this. The action was so well choreographed. I already mentioned about that little chase scene throughout the castle with Sophie Lillis' character. Amazing. That was amazing. There are a few more set pieces that were just bananas. It felt like a summer movie. I felt like it was summer. Sitting in the theater watching this movie. It has all the ingredients for a big blockbuster summer movie. And if I don't know if Paramount misjudged this film or wasn't confident that it would, blow the doors off the box office, but this I think they misjudged it and probably should have moved it back 2 to 3 months and put it in summer. Um, I know it's a crowded field in the summertime in the theaters. I get that, and I guess they're looking at it from that aspect. But I think you probably would have got a better. Of course, the movie hasn't come out yet, but you probably would have got a better response financially, with kids being out of school and whatnot, to go see this film. But who knows? I could be wrong. I hope that I am. This movie deserves to be a big hit. Um, yeah, the action set pieces were great. The special effects were amazing. Uh, just the scale of everything. You're looking at landscapes in the background, in the foreground that you never get to see, but it's good to have that world built. It's not like nothing was tunnel vision. It wasn't like this little closed corner of the world type feel. This felt like a world. It felt like a just this mythical world, and you got to see all the landscapes, all the cities in the background, the castles and the little villages and all this here. It just felt lived in. The villain in this film, who was played by Daisy Head, what real good villain, really good villain. Um, Everything worked for me. I honestly, I am so shocked and surprised that this film was this good. Was not expecting this at all. Me and my wife walked out and we was like, wow. We just looked at each other like, man, this movie was good. This was a good movie. Because neither of us played the game in all this here. So, this I'll say this much: if you're not into the game like me, you would leave out of here kind of curious and probably would want to get into some D&D. I really want to get into it. I was so impressed with this film. Great job from Goldstein and Daly. They did amazing. I can see them transferring over to the MCU, maybe back over to DC. Now that it has new leadership, maybe they can get back into the comic book film realm rather. And here's a theory, or not a theory, but here's a perfect fit for these two gentlemen who directed this film. I can see them working on X-Men. I mean, hear me out here. There was a lot of characters in this film. Like I said, Chris Pine's character, Michelle Rodriguez's character, uh, Renee J- Renee John Page, and Justin Smith, Sophie Lillis. All these characters, and they're like a group, man. They're like Avengers Assemble. They all were different. Every single one of them were completely different. No, none of them had the same skill set. They all were different, and they all had their own backstory. Their own kind of a subplot, if you will, and it all these characters were flushed out, and you enjoyed them all. Even the villain, all of their stories. You got to really dive into those characters, and I can picture these fellas directing an X-Men film when you have different characters, different skill sets, different backgrounds, uh, and bringing them together to fight against, Magneto or Mr. Sinister or whoever. It would be great. That's my pitch to him. To the MCU, to Kevin Feige. Look at Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly as possible directors of the X-Men. Just throwing that out there. That's how impressed I am. And trust me, I am a huge X-Men fan. So I'm not just throwing this out here to say, oh, that'd be cute. No, as somebody who loves the X-Men, to give that reigning endorsement to these fellas, that must mean that Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves is a good film. And it truly is. Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves gets a letter grade of a B plus. One of the best films I've seen this year. And I know it's only March. And I can honestly picture this film being in my top 10 at the end of this year. I know there's a lot of movie left. There's a lot of year left. But I can see it creeping in there at the end of the year, depending on what else is coming out. But as it stands right now, it is up there. And the reason I'm giving it a B plus and it's not in the A category is because you probably could have shaved off 5 to 6 minutes of the film. It just felt just a tad bit too long. Just a tad. And I'm nitpicking, people. Trust me. I'm not like, man, I wasn't sitting at the end like, man, come on, man. What if they wrap it up? It wasn't that. It just felt like it was just a tad bit too long. But other than that, great. Acting, directing, the writing was good, the jokes landed, the special effects were seamless, and the action was exciting. Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Amongst Thieves, highly recommended. Gets a B plus. Go check it out. If you've seen it, I would like to know how you feel. Or if you haven't seen it yet and you're kind of on the fence, I would like to know, hey, are you considering it? Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Also look me up on Twitter at the KB Radio Network, and on all other social media platforms. Just look up the KB Radio Network. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, sharing the show, and subscribing to the YouTube channel. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, on YouTube, or wherever you are currently listening to the KB Radio Network, thank you for joining me for this review of Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves. Glad that you joined me. I greatly appreciate it. Want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love one another. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.